The equitable modern grid, like I started this hour saying, is my keystone initiative. Governor Lamont specifically recruited me to Connecticut to modernize our electric grid, and that is something that we spend quite a lot of time on as an agency. Last October, we released our framework for the equitable modern grid. It outlined our objectives and what we lovingly refer to as opportunities rather than barriers. And what that equitable modern grid framework did was identify 11 separate tracks, which in and of themselves have some subcomponents. But there are 11 different ways that we think the electric grid as it stands today needs to be modernized. And in order to achieve, the goals of the state. So 4 of the objectives that we outlined in that framework, they're shown on the screen here. And, we've had some conversations, both internally and with external stakeholders when folks, kind of question whether these objectives are, sometimes inherently at odds with each other. And that's been kind of an interesting conversation to watch it play out. So, for example, we are critically focused on advancing the affordability of energy in the state. I think, as has been well discussed and well publicized over the past 2 months in particular, we have the highest electric rates on a per kilowatt hour basis in the country. And I knew that when I got recruited here, but it's one of those things where you you can prepare all you want, but being in the moment and trying to figure out what levers you have to address that, very different things. And I think we've received a lot of interest from folks trying to understand how we are going to both make electricity more affordable while also advancing and modernizing the grid, because those things, modernizing our grid is going to come at a cost. So the reason that energy affordability is front and center and is the first track of this process is to make sure that we all keep that in mind moving forward, and that we can try to explore ways to modernize our rates and our different tariff structures to make sure that all different customer classes have an opportunity to at least receive the value for what they're paying for today. With that, I think that one thing that I've observed since coming here is, this isn't a critique, it's an observation. Different states approach things differently. In this state, they're, from my perspective coming in, there's a lot of emphasis on energy policy going hand in hand with economic development. And in recognition of that, we think one of the core objectives of modernizing the grid is to make sure that we're focused on developing the in-state, economy that is green economy that is going to backstop that. Because you can definitely design a grid mod process that achieves the goals of decarbonization without making sure that you bring along the in-state economic development. So, those are all 4 of these objectives are top of mind as we work through this framework. And then getting back to what I was talking about in the first part of this presentation, in terms of engaging with PURA, one way that I knew very early on we wanted to make grid mod different from other things that PURA does is to ensure that the process was accessible to the private market where the solutions and the innovation are naturally coming from. And that's not to say that we don't expect innovation and innovative solutions from our utilities, but it's in recognition that regulated utilities are not designed or bred inherently to generate that type of innovation. So we wanted to make sure that the process was open more broadly. So what we did was we set up this kind of cyclical process where we have an opportunity statement for all 11 of the tracks. Then we moved into what we called solutions days or public forums, which took the form before we moved to the Zoom platform, but they've been moving right along on Zoom as well. They took the form of a roundtable where you didn't have to be represented by an attorney. You didn't have to have a fully baked idea either. It was come to the table and tell us what you've heard, what you've been working on, what you think could be like thrown into the mix in terms of a solution to some of the barriers. And there are quite a number of barriers opportunities for the state. And I think some of those solutions days went better than others. And as we progressed down the track and we started to attract more and more, non-traditional stakeholders, I think the ideas have, gotten even better. So what comes next in each of these tracks after we have these solutions days is we, PURA staff, we take a step back and we issued requests for proposals and requests for program designs in several of these dockets. And in 3 of the dockets, we had those responses due July 31st. And what comes after that step is we are sorting through all those responses and putting together a straw proposal where we're matching up all these different potential solutions into what we hope is a comprehensive proposal to address that track. So this will all become hopefully more concrete as we get into the examples of the tracks themselves. But after these straw proposals get issued, we will be having what is more like familiar to traditional stakeholders, where we have a proceeding to do discovery and cross-examine the solution. And all of these tracks are going to come together. When we get through all 11 tracks, the idea is that by the beginning of 2022, which depending on where you sit as a stakeholder, either sounds really, really fast and really, really soon, or too far away. And I think it's both of those things at the same time. But we're working towards this 2022 timeline, and the IDSP that you see on the screen, this stands for what we are going to call an integrated distribution system plan. So the end goal here for all 11 tracks is that they're going to come together in a comprehensive distribution system plan that the utilities will then begin issuing on an every 2-year basis on the years in between the integrated resource plan that DEEP issues. So as I mentioned, hopefully this will get more concrete as we get into the topics, and I have 2 of my senior staff today that are going to get into the weeds on 3 of these topics that we thought might be most engaging for this conversation this morning. So I'm just going to really quickly tick through what those topics are if you're less familiar with our grid mod effort. So the 6 topics that you see on the screen were the 6 of the 11 that we kicked off all at the same time. The advanced metering infrastructure, electric storage, and zero emissions vehicles are the 3 that we went out for requests for proposals and program design that were due July 31st, as I mentioned. Innovation Pilots is creating a regulatory sandbox that Josh will talk to us about in a little bit. So all of these 6 are well underway, and we're, I'd say, on track to issue straw proposals, and several of them by the end of this year. So the other 5 topics that make up our 11 include the ones on the screen today. We have launched 3 of those: the non-wires alternatives, the resilience and reliability standards, and REO 9, which is our DER docket, in which we are trying to pull together all of our current incentive programs to make sure that they are working in concert and will work in concert with the programs that we are contemplating in the other tracks. And still to come are 2 final tracks, which were always designed to come last. The 10th one is waiting on the issuance of the IRP from our sister agency, DEEP. And the last one on new rate designs is in recognition that the 10 tracks that come before it are going to produce or enable new approaches to rates and tariffs in the state, and want to pull those together.